Hello, good day, guys. Just going to be doing a top-down analysis on GBPUSD for next week. Today is Sunday, um, so we are going to be doing this weekly analysis for GBPUSD, and let's see what to expect for next week. So, let's start with the daily time frame. On the daily time frame, we have this. What do we find in the daily time frame? We find trend and we find point of interest and liquidity. So on the daily time frame, we saw this higher low that made this higher high, breaking the structure after we grabbed some liquidity right here. We grabbed some liquidity of this demand, and we came back, we came down into this demand area right here, and we led to a break of structure. So this is our external structure on the daily time frame. That's the external high, and this is the external low. So on the daily time frame, on the daily time frame, we can see that we are in a bullish market because our external structure is bullish. So we have find trend, and now let's find point of interest. Well, at least for next week, we know price is not going to come to any point of interest down here. So let's scroll down and let's see what we have on the recent price action here. So what do we see here? We have this higher low. The internal structure of the main push is this higher high, higher low, a new higher high, a new higher low, a new higher high. This is the new higher high, higher low, higher high. So the internal structure is still bullish, and then we switched bearish. Why did I call this a bearish break of structure? Is because the last higher low that made this higher high has now broke down to this zone here. So internal structure on the daily time frame is now bearish, right? So we broke this structure. So on the daily time frame, what do we see? We can say, all right, we are external structure is bullish, but internal structure is bearish. So we mark our range. This is our range high, and this is our range low. So the internal structure of the bullish market, this is the internal structure right here. This is what we should be focusing on. So we have this bearish main push right here in the internal structure. So we mark out our supply zone that led to the break of structure. This is our extreme supply, and this is the decisional. This is not you can see we have small inducement right here. This inducement fails to make a new higher high. They will make a new bearish break of structure to the downside. So this zone is important, but right now we can see price came and we swept some liquidity above there, and now we are going bearish. So we'll go down to the 4 hours time frame to dig more on that. So but right now we can see that we came back down into a previous inducement demand zone, because this demand zone swept liquidity. It swept liquidity and it led to a break of structure to the upside, the internal bullish break of structure that we just talked about, right? So price is bullish, bearish, right? We hit a demand zone and we started giving a bullish reaction. So there's no bullish break of structure here. There's no reason to call this a buyer zone, because we continue going to the upside. But right now, what we can clearly see on the internal structure right here is that we are bearish and we stretch some liquidity. So that's done for the daily time frame. Let's go down to the 4 hours time frame and let's see. Let's do the same thing again. So on the 4 hours time frame, this is our bearish main push that we focused on, the last lower high that made the lower low down here. So once we made this lower low down here, what do we see? We see we came into a demand level and we started giving the reaction. So once we are giving that reaction, we swept some liquidity of this supply zone. So we swept liquidity on that supply zone and we started giving internal bearish structure to the downside. So already I marked out the extreme supply of the main push on the 4 hours time frame, on the daily time frame, sorry. So what do we find on the 4 hour time frame right now? We look for the same thing again. So what do I see? We started seeing internal structure is going bearish, internal lower high, internal lower low. Let me use this. Internal lower high, internal lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, and lower low. So we see that price is bearish, currently bearish. Then we switch bullish to the upside. You break the internal structure to the upside. So let me take that out first. This is the structure that we broke. Now we have to understand what actually happened that we broke structure. We can see we came down into the previous higher low that made the higher high. A decisional demand zone is just a demand zone. We know it's weak because after we have this inducement right here, price is currently bearish. We know this demand zone is most likely going to be a smart money trap. So what do we see? We saw price came in, give an early reaction right before we take out that demand zone. We swept this demand zone liquidity. So after this liquidity swept, we saw a very strong bullish reaction, breaking the internal structure or the 4 hours time frame. So currently right now, the main push on the 4 hours time frame is from this low to this high right here. So this is our main push on the 4 hours time frame because we swept a demand zone, we swept a liquidity on the demand zone there, and we led to internal break of structure. So at this point, this liquidity inducement right here was simply to come down, and we induced low, we grab liquidity of this demand, and we continue bullish, and we can continue bullish back into this extreme. We can be bullish into that extreme supply zone there, and from there we can go bearish or we continue bullish. So that's not for us to make the decision of, but right now we can see that price, the internal structure on the 4 hours time frame is currently bullish. So let's go down to the 15-minute time frame and let's dig deep. But before we do that, let me still dissect something on this 4 hours time frame. So after we made the internal break of structure right here, breaking the structure right here, we started seeing the retracement, internal lower low, internal lower high, internal lower low, internal lower high, and another lower low, hitting this demand zone right here. This demand zone that led to this break of structure, we hit that demand zone and we respected it. So this is showing me that the buyers are clearly in control because we also swept liquidity, early buyers liquidity, hitting that demand zone, and we are leading to another bullish break of structure, right? So we lead to another bullish break of structure right here, showing that the buyers are in control. So let's go down to the 15-minute time frame. Let's see what we could be expecting. Remember, on the 4 hours time frame, we said our main push, our 4 hours main push is this bearish. Our 4 hours external structure is from this high to this low right here. So we are in a bearish market currently, and we could come to this extreme and go down to make a new lower low, or we could actually just continue going lower. So that's not something we judge for now. So let's follow market structure and let's go down to the lower time frame and see what we could be expecting for next week. So this is the lowest time frame I'll go for this analysis, but I just want you guys to understand something. So once we came back down into this demand level, we swept early liquidity. We even swept a smart money liquidity. Why? Because we have inducement, build up, inducement, bullish push out. This was a smart money trap. As you can see, we also gave them reaction to invite the buyers, and we swept them of their liquidity. This is actually clean. You can see and understand this. So we swept this smart money trap liquidity. Why did this become a smart money trap? The reason it became a smart money trap was because once we made this high, we made an inducement, a run of liquidity right here, and we pushed a lot lower, and we induced them, and we came down into that demand, and we mitigated that demand zone. So after the mitigation of the demand zone, we saw the bullish reaction again, showing us that the buyers are clearly in control. So we have a bullish break of structure right here, breaking the last lower high that made the lower low in the complex pullback on the 15-minute time frame. Because once we made that bullish break of structure, we started seeing internal structure, internal lower high, internal lower low, internal lower high, internal lower low, internal lower high, right? Hope you guys are understanding this. Internal lower low, and now we have internal structure is bullish. So internal structure is showing me that we are bullish, and we could be expecting, let me take out some of this drawing so we could see it clearly. Internal structure is showing that we are bullish, breaking structure to the upside. So what happened last week was we came into a high here, not mainly a supply. This is a higher high. We don't sell at higher highs, right? So we came into this supply, but we did a build up of liquidity, right? We did a build up of this high. We did an inducement, a run of liquidity of that high, and we have another bearish reaction. So internal structure started showing us that we are bearish. So until we came back and we hit that demand zone, you can see, guys, we came back, we hit that demand zone, we respected the demand zone, showing us that the buyers are still in control. So this inducement was simply to come down to mitigate this demand zone. It didn't lead to full break of structure. It just came down into this demand zone right here, and we started seeing another bullish pushes to the upside. So let me actually take this out as a break of structure, because we have mitigated this demand zone. We have completed the market structure cycle by build up, inducement, bullish push out, bearish retracement, hitting that demand zone, and I started seeing another bullish reaction. So this is clearly showing that this is a weak supply, this is a weak supply. These are most likely going to be inviting the sellers before we take them out. So what should I expect on next week, and what should I be focused on? What we are focused on now on the 15-minute time frame is that this is our main push from this low to this high right here. We know we don't have a supply zone right now because we are inducing. If you read from the sellers, we grab this liquidity right here, we induced these highs right here, mitigated some kind of supply. But what did we do? We simply came back into demand. We didn't break structure, we came back into demand. That's important, because Once you are reading from the sellers, you can see we have another build up inducement bearish pushes. So this is just showing me that the bears are not in control because we are mitigating demand, and demand is showing strength by giving bullish breakup structures. So for that, and let's focus on more on the intraday main push on the 15-minute time frame, because this is the last higher low that made this higher high to the upside. So once we have this inducement came down, should have gone to make a new lower low, showing us that the sellers are now in control, but it failed and buyers to control after hitting this demand zone. So I marked that out, and what do we see? We see price not coming into that supply, because once we mark out that supply zone, the last imbalance, we see price missed that supply on Friday. This was on Friday, right? Price missed that supply and we didn't hit it, but we are seeing sellers taking control. Why? Because we see this build up of liquidity, we see this inducement not clearly hitting a supply zone, and we are seeing bearish pushes. So the reason I'm not calling this a smart money trap yet is because we have to wait for the Asian sessions to read before we know what to expect during Monday, because price could just induce mitigate this supply and we start seeing complex pullback back into this demand zone before we continue bullish, or we could have a cycle of where we could have inducement run of liquidity right here, coming back down, finding another inducement and leading to another bullish pushes, right, breaking past all the smart money zone right here. The reason I'm calling all this supply a smart money zone, we can also see after we've seen it from structure is showing us that we are bullish. We could also see it from liquidity, because when we go back to the 4 hour or the 1 hour time frame, what I can clearly see is an obvious trend line, right? So um let's us go to the 4 hours time frame. So we can clearly see it. We can clearly see that the sellers are not in control and we are having obvious trend line, right? This is it. One touch, two touch, three touch, showing us that the sellers are just printing liquidity. Now, when the buyers are now ready, we can look for inducement to follow the buyers and we continue bullish. Now, I'm not going to say we are going to be bullish on Monday, because from inducement right now, the sellers are now in control after we saw that inducement not actually going to coming from a nice supply zone, but it's showing us that the sellers are in control. So we have to be careful when we are looking for buys. So we have to wait for price to show us that we are now going to be bullish, show us using our daily cycle, maybe sweeping Asian low, sweeping smart money zone, then we look for zones to buy. We look for liquidity to buy to the upside. At the same time, I'm not saying we cannot look for sales also. Why? Because we could also have a cycle of where the Asian session is printing, all right? So we could maybe induce this weak supply right here, giving small reaction, induce them into a supply zone using our daily cycle, and we can have that bearish reaction and maybe coming back down into a demand level right here. So that's not something I'm going to be more focused on. But based on the higher time frame, what we should be expecting next week is price should go bullish, right? Because we are seeing that the buyers are in control and not the sellers. As Thanks for watching, and I think that's all for now. I think I've explained everything this 15-minute video, and thanks for watching, guys. So that will be all for today's analysis.